Guys, a quick update video on Bitcoin and Ethereum. As you can see, I have to wear glasses for today's video because I had a minor eyelid surgery, but everything's fine with me. It's incredibly exciting what's happening with Bitcoin right now. In the last videos, we talked about this in the video before last, about the long-term trend from the all-time high downwards, which was our rejection level, where we recently also had the first rejection. The price briefly dropped, but now, apparently due to the news about Trump and Iran regarding possible new negotiations, there's been a new pump, and now I've drawn a few new trend lines for you. We know this flag. We've had it in place for a very, very long time. I'm just going to remove it for a moment now. What's also very interesting now is if we include exactly this rejection level. What I discovered, which is actually also super valid, is that we now have a very nice breakout above it here as well. Accordingly, it's a super exciting level that we have here at the current moment. Not only have we broken the all-time high downtrend with the daily candle at this point, we've also broken through this other rejection trend to the upside here. That's why we're currently at a very, very exciting level. But I also want to point out some other things. Level 2 data. The whales are still selling off. This means that as long as the price is rising a bit, the big whales with over 10,000 bitcoins are still selling off. That's not such a good sign as long as they're not accumulating, because they usually do that at really low prices. Even when we look at the ETFs, yesterday we had $331 million in Bitcoin ETF sell-offs. Not so great, but on the other hand, there was nearly $10 million in accumulation for Ethereum. And now here's something very, very interesting. Let's take a look at the order book liquidity delta, because we can see here that with the massively rising price, we have an incredibly high sell-off volume. What does that mean in detail? It means that right now a very large proportion of people are placing short orders, which could push the price down again. We see similar patterns from back then. We can see that on April 11th, there was a very good increase in Bitcoin. A lot of short delta volume came in and the price dropped. That's why things are quite difficult at the moment. Are we now extremely bullish because of the trend breakout, or should we rather pay attention to the large sell volume? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that just because these are present, the price will also fall again. No, it could also be that all these short orders simply get kicked out and the price continues to rise. Of course, right now everything is driven by news. We can also take a look at this in a different time frame. In the 1 hour chart, there we see similar patterns with larger delta volume. Here we're only talking about the spot delta. So right now people are very willing to sell their spot positions. But in the past we had the same situation. We had strong spot delta selling volume and the price corrected afterwards. Accordingly, we have to be careful because it doesn't always mean that's how it will be. Sometimes we've had small corrections after such a rise when selling occurred. You can see that here, for example, from 69,800, the price then dropped to 67,860. That doesn't mean it has to be an extremely big crash, but there was still a correction. What would indicate a correction if we look at this in detail? If we go to my other chart, sorry, I wanted to show you something else in this area. If we turn this off here now, you know this red line and you also know this downward trend line. I just want to make this a bit clearer. If I turn on my trend lines now, this is our all-time high trend, which really was our resistance from the all-time high here. And now we can see that it has been broken to the upside. A very, very good sign. But now this indicator from the trend line is showing me another new resistance line, which is actually quite interesting because it would go from this high to this high, and I've extended it here. And if I extend this line here, we can see that it would actually fit perfectly into this area, so that after reaching the all-time high, we would still have a bit of support. I'll zoom in a bit further here, and right after that, a strong sell-off volume candle appeared. And that could potentially be our new rejection, which I'm keeping an eye on. But now back to the Bitcoin chart in this area. I've prepared a little something. We'll turn this off again now and switch to the 4 hour chart here. I said in the last video we discussed that with this bullish trend reversal, we have several target zones here. In the video before last, we talked about this target zone. In the last video, this target zone, which was reached, strong rejection, and now we've actually also reached the second target level. Not only the second target level, we also talked about this liquidity here at 75,000 US dollars. And in fact, we've dipped perfectly into it at the current moment. I don't want to say that we're going to go down immediately now, but liquidity has been taken, the target level has been reached, and if we look into the 4 hour chart, this divergence, which was initially only in that area, is building up more and more at this point. You can see it no matter how I extend it, the divergence remains intact, and even at this moment we still have this bearish divergence that is present here. And if we lay it out like this, it could actually be a sign that we might get a rejection. Why? If we look at the liquidation levels, Now, on a 2-day basis, we can clearly see there is still liquidity at 75,500 US dollars. But if we go into Model 3, where we have much more insight on a 1-week basis, we can see that this was the liquidation level I showed you here, which I also marked up here. This is exactly the area we've just wicked into. That has now been taken out here, and just look at the cluster around 70,500 down to about 69,700 US dollars. This is a really large cluster, and I can switch to symbol again where we can see all exchanges together, and that's actually a very strong indication that this will still be a super interesting level for the market makers and institutions to pick up. So we're keeping an eye on the 70,500 to 69,000 US dollar range. Where would that be? We're talking about the area directly below this support that we had, roughly around here, which is still part of the fair value gap that would be created by this large candle. The question is, are the news enough for us to keep pumping? Will we still grab the liquidity above us that I just mentioned? Or do we now really just have a continuing upward bullish trend, which would of course be super interesting also for all the positions? For me, it's super interesting, almost all trading bots, or actually with the exception of one. Even the Ethereum Coin M trading bot, which I started at 2,800 US dollars, is now back in profit, and only the S&P 500 currently has a loss in it. And apart from that, almost all the other positions are also doing really well in profit. My Ethereum Coin M position, as you can see, is now almost 2,400 US dollars in profit. Here too, I still see the possibility that we could go further down. Then I have a small Solana loss of 15 US dollars, but the Bitcoin Coin M long is also here, with almost 1,500 US dollars in profit. So at the moment, things are looking very, very good here as well. And the trading bots as well, the short DCA bot that I shared in the Signal group is currently a bit in the loss, but everything is fine. So it's doing its job exactly as it should. Hype is doing wonderfully now with $88 in profit, and all the other spot DCA bots are also in profit. So at the moment, everything is actually going very well for me. And now I'm just curious, are these news items that have just come out really so positive that we can say, let's get in and finally see a massive increase? Or will we perhaps see, let me remove this here again so I can make the chart clearer for you. Maybe here again, back to the bear flag top, that we go back up to 77,700. Because if we go in here, and let me show you something with the, sorry, where did I put that? Right here. Because we have a major liquidation there. Who still remembers? In one of my previous videos, I think it was the second to last one, I showed this. Or also in the live stream at DACH. By the way, today at 6 p.m. German time, I'll be live again on the PIONEX DACH YouTube channel. We'll also go through a few things with the DCA bots there. But what do we see here that's very, very interesting? Let's turn on the liquidation heat map for a moment. This is exactly the new liquidation level I mentioned, which is going to be very exciting. We picked up the last big one, and the new one we have below is also super interesting. That's on the Coinglass Legend. But now there's an exciting level that I find very, very interesting. That's a liquidation at 76,050 US dollars. I'll tell you exactly where it is in detail in just a moment. I'll zoom in on it as well. At 76,065 US dollars, there are 1,030 Bitcoins in a liquidation from a short position. So the question is, will the market makers, will the institutions hunt down this trader? Because the hyper-liquid traders, as you might already know from the past, are regularly hunted and liquidated. And of course, that would be an exciting level. If we see a rise at exactly this price, then we know, yes, the market makers and the institutional players are indeed hunting for large positions. And 1,030 Bitcoins is, of course, already a huge position that's waiting here to be liquidated. Let's quickly continue with Ethereum because there's also a lot of interesting things to see there. On the 4-hour chart, if we look here, this divergence that I already talked about in the last video is still present. In fact, it has even increased in this case. If we look at it here, we see that the price continues to rise, but at this point, the RSI is not able to make a higher high. If we actually make a higher high on the 4-hour chart now and break through this area to the upside, that would at least invalidate the bearish divergence and could potentially catapult us to higher prices. But what I have also noticed now, which I didn't observe in the last video, if we take a look at this, this was actually our trend reversal break. And at this point, we have also reached the target level 1.618, triggered it, and are currently facing a rejection, which is also super interesting to see. But it's not just this target level. Because of course, we also still have the 1.809 and the two target levels, 2,428 to 2,471, if we go into that now. And if I remove this here and we briefly switch to the daily chart, we have actually now triggered this 0.5 Fibonacci. This is exactly the area that we had here. Last time it just barely missed my short entry. But at this point, we can see that the 0.5 Fibonacci was actually triggered very cleanly. The question is, are we really going to continue rising because of the news, or is this now going to become a new rejection zone? Because if I go in here now and look at this on Ethereum, it's actually a very interesting level that we have here. I'll turn this off again here. And if we include this now, and also this bear flag, because we've already broken above it again. So with so many fake outs, things are starting to get questionable. If I remove this now, we can actually see that we have an ascending trend and here a rejection zone that has now developed, which could of course be very clean. We could also adjust this a bit more, then it would look a little nicer here with a small fake out. But what could be very clean here now is if we get a breakout here, maybe up to this next 0.5 Fibonacci to 0.618. You know, these are two levels that I have used here. One is the Fibonacci from this area. That's the smaller one, which we've just triggered. And above that would be the larger one. That's what I just drew here. And that would be super interesting for me. As I mentioned before, there's still this strong fair value gap there. We have the 0.618 and the 0.5 Fibonacci as a rejection zone. And at the same time, and we shouldn't forget this, we also have a target level here, which I find super interesting. If I draw this in here and include it, we end up roughly at the target levels from this possible bullish trend that we've now established here on a daily basis. That means this area will definitely be interesting for me for a short position. I'll keep you up to date when the time comes. At the moment, I've entered a small short position on Bitcoin on Bitunix, as you can see here in this area. So I'm trying to short this area right now. I don't know if it will work out. I'll compound it if we continue to rise, but for now, it's still more of a risk position. But I'm taking it because of the liquidity we have below us. And as I mentioned earlier with Bitcoin, this bearish divergence that's developing here, especially on the 4-hour chart, is still interesting. Additionally, we have the large liquidity delta, which I'm also trying to take advantage of right now, as long as I don't get my ass handed to me here. We'll see. At this point, I'm going to try to short everything a bit. Liquidity is below us, divergence is building up, and the RSI is actually at very high levels right now, which in the past have repeatedly led to rejections in these areas. And I'd like to generate some profits for myself there, provided it works out, of course. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, feel free to leave a subscription and a like under this video. I'd really appreciate it, a few comments for the algorithm, and we'll see each other again next time.